Although there are books in the Allport collection that probably predate the beginnings of the formal collection, we can in fact date when Cecil Allport, Henry Allport's father, decided to begin collecting. Because we have here Cecil Allport's letter book, and on the 17th of March 1899, he's writing to his brother Gordon in London. And he says, "I shall always be glad to spend a few pounds this way, for after all it is the only thing I care for and the only hobby I have." So things had been fairly bad in Tasmania financially, but from some good investments, Cecil Allport had some money to spare and he wanted a hobby, so he started collecting books and, to a lesser extent, paintings and manuscripts. And he became not only a very well-financed but a very well-informed collector. And one of the things he was interested in collecting books about Tasmanian history, about exploration, about travel and discovery. Cecil Allport died in 1926 and handed the collection over to his son Henry. When Henry Allport died and bequeathed the collection to the state of Tasmania, and eventually his house was sold and the collection was moved in to this building, it meant that there was a very substantial financial estate left from which they can acquire additional items from the collection. Young William Crowther was a visitor to the Allport house, and in about 1912 or 1913 there was young Crowther at the house, and Crowther records that Mr. Allport showed them a painting he had just acquired and then showed them this beautiful volume, first edition of an account of the voyages of Captain Cook. And everyone admired the book very much, and Cecil Allport said, "Oh, but it cost me an awful lot of money." This volume here looks a little bit battered. The spine title is Ayres Discoveries in Central Australia, Volume 1. And it's a book which will be found in many collections. Journals of Expeditions of Discovery into Central Australia and Overland by Edward John Eyre, published in 1845. But this is a special copy. It's described as a special copy on thick paper, the only one done, with the 2 scarce folding maps and 22 plates. It is the only copy of that type in the world, so not just a rarity, but absolutely unique. We were able to buy a most extraordinary rarity by Matthew Flinders, a book called Observations on the Coasts of Van Diemen's Land, on Bass's Straits and its islands, and on parts of the coast of New South Wales, printed in London in 1801. There are about 11 copies of that known to have survived. We now have one of them. Another copy came up for sale a few years ago and the price was astronomically high. It was about $500,000. We didn't pay that for this copy, I'm grateful to say. We use the money that comes from the Allport bequest to buy not only antiquarian old books but also new books. One thing in particular that we attempt to do is buy books that are finally produced in Tasmania. And this is a book published only 2 years ago by Blubberhead Press in Hobart called Van Diemen's Land Revealed. And one of the very nice connections between this book, which is now in the collection, and Flinders' original Observations on the Coast of Van Diemen's Land is that, with our permission, this new book edited by Dan Sprod contains a facsimile reproduction of the original Flinders that we already had in the collection. So a very rare book has now become much more widely available to the public through this new publication.